Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos both released from the UFC. That's how the headline came out. What great memories, right? I mean, what great memories those two guys have left us. And you look at that and go, okay, where do they go from here? It's the same question you always ask when somebody gets released, which is, are they done fighting or are they done fighting here in the UFC? It's the first question you have, and you don't always have the answer, but it brings you back to the same commentary, which is, what did they have to do? Who was left to fight? And we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but there is nothing more important when I show up to work today than making sure I have a job to come to tomorrow. Nothing. No matter what good job I'm going to do today or what a bad job I'm going to do today, nothing will take the place on the level of importance than just making sure I can come back tomorrow, right? It's one of those things. And with Junior and Overeem, if we are attempting to answer the question of are they done fighting or are they done fighting here, we're still left with the question of what do we want to see them do? Who do we want to see them fight next? And it's one of those questions that's so important to answer. You know, it's one of those things when Adesanya, as great as he is, and as big of a star as he is, Adesanya will never leave the octagon without lining his next fight up. He's never done it and he won't. And you might think that that's obvious and that's low-hanging fruit. And of course, Izzy's going to come back and he's the champion and he's a big star. That's not always going to be true. There will be a time, even in the great Adesanya's career, when people are going to wonder, is he going to be back? Does he want to come back? Do they want him to come back? Do we, the audience, have something left that we want to see him do? And I only bring that to you because we would be left with a question mark, by example, with Junior Dos Santos. Junior did nothing between his last fight and now, which has been over a month removed, possibly closer to 2 months, in that his last opponent, who was Ciryl Gane, has already competed again. He has nothing between then and now to make us say, I want to see Junior fight and fill in the blank. And by the way, guys, I do not want to have to apologize for my words that could be mistaken for me kicking a guy when he's down. Not in the least. This is a former champion of the world who I have nothing but praise for, but I am attempting to use him, who is an example that is relevant, to prove a bigger point, which is, if he's going to fight again and he's going to fight somewhere, who do you want to see him fight? And before you sit down and you start thinking about it and you start looking at rankings and you start thinking about who's available, if you do not have an answer off the tip of your tongue on the drop of a hat for any fighter's name who comes out of my mouth, that fighter has screwed up somewhere. If you ever have to sit down and get the rankings out and get a weight class chart out and start looking at records and make sure that they hadn't crossed paths somewhere along the way, maybe even on the regional circuit 10 years ago, if you have to do any level of research to answer the simple question of who do you want to see this guy fight, that guy has done something wrong. And it's a very tough question if you were to come back and go, well, no, listen, there's a market. There's a market in Japan, or there's an upcoming in Singapore. If you don't have the answer of who do I want to see this guy fight, not who can I get him fight, not who can I talk him into fighting, not who can I negotiate a fight with, I'm not asking you any question that it requires any level of sophistication. Not, well, let me talk to the managers and let's see if we can work this out. And is it 3 rounds or 5? I'm asking you the simplest question in the world, which is just simply, who do you want to see him fight? And if there is not an answer bursting off your tongue, that athlete has done something wrong. And that's not for the guys that were released, by the way. That's for the guys that are still around. And there is a reason that Adesanya, and part of it comes with humility. As great as Israel Adesanya is, and as much as you all respect him, there is a humility within him that he doesn't realize he's such a star. It's one of the reasons that he does so well, right? As soon as Adesanya starts believing the things that people are saying about him, it's going to be the beginning of the end. But he comes with such a humility that he is not certain that the UFC is going to want him back. Even though he's the champion of the world and he's main eventing shows. I only bring this to you because he will never leave the arena without lining up what's next first. And it's a very big deal because there's a meaningful difference in the athletes who have been released, or the athletes who are on a chopping block, or the athletes that get a call every 4 months because their contract says it. And you really need to ask yourself this, and it's a real tough question, which, by the way, I'm not Mr. Innocent of. I'm expressing this to you guys because I lived through it. Many of the lessons that I'm coming out to talk to you about from my perch over here is because I had made those mistakes myself, but I only bring to you, if you are ever a guy when they sit down to a matchmakers meeting, okay? If Sean Shelby's got to go through a list of papers and see who he owes a fight to, a mistake has been made. There should always be a question. Hey, matchmaker, who do you want to see so-and-so fight? Then it becomes a question. Can I get them to fight them? Is it available? Is it within budget? Will they agree? Will this trainer agree? Will these managers agree? Can I get everybody to the table? Those are the good problems to have. If you can't answer the very first question, who do I want to see so-and-so fight? There is a huge problem. There's a huge mistake made from the marketing, but also of the eligibility of the fighters. So you just want to ask yourself that all the time. Do I still have an opponent? Do I say, if there's somebody out there? If there's not, can I get a little something going? Should I get a little something going? Should I plant some seeds? Should I leverage my social media? Next time I'm doing an interview, should I bring up so-and-so's name to test the waters and see what the reaction is? The answer to the question is yes. If there is ever a time in your career when the average fan, without hesitation, cannot state unequivocally who they would like to see you face, there is a problem. And nobody's safe. And if you think, well, I'm going to be humble and I'm a sportsman and I'll take on anybody they want, those are all very nice things to say. I'm sharing with you two of the best fighters who I've ever seen in my life in the most perennial weight class, that of heavy, who have headlined pay-per-views, who have main evented television cards, who have been seen the world over, were both confronted with the same question, which is, who do you want to see them fight? And there was not a readily available answer. And I realize we can go create one. I realize that's the job of the matchmaker. I realize you can create a story. That's the job of the promoter. I realize you can judge a fight. I realize that you can referee one. That's the side of the commission. I'm asking you straight up, who do you want to see so-and-so face? And if there's not an answer, a mistake has been made greatly. And I'm not just pointing the finger at the athlete here. Where was the manager to get in front of this? Did you think you were going to rest on laurels and you're going to be able to say that I used to be the champion or I used to main event shows? Is that what you thought? And by the way, really, I'm not questioning these two athletes. They truly have given me some of the great moments I've ever seen in the sport. I'm using them as an example because it's current. I'm using Dos Santos and I'm using Overeem just because they're current examples that you would understand. But there are so many other guys on the card who cannot say, much like Overeem, that I main evented a pay-per-view opposite Brock Lesnar. They cannot say like Junior Dos Santos, I was the champion of the world. I broke records with Cain Velasquez winning a title on network television known as Fox. There is a number of athletes under contract, 556 to be exact, who will never achieve what Alistair Overeem achieved in K1, in Pride, in the UFC, who will never achieve what Junior achieved, which is the champion of the world and a sure lock for a future Hall of Famer. And even they, who do not have the paper and the resume and the notoriety and the successes of those two athletes, they will still have the same problem, which is if somebody asks them, who do you want to see them fight next? There is no readily available answer, and they don't see that as a problem. I'm going to put it on the fighter. I'm going to put it on the fighter every time because he's the one with the mouthpiece and his short pants holding the microphone. So I'm going to put it on him. But the truth is he's paying somebody else, known as a manager, who has somehow convinced him that because I can fill out paperwork and make sure signatures and dates are in the right place, that I get 10% of the purse. Where was the manager on this? Where was the manager on the heels of defeat, not lining up what was next or making it interesting? Just because you had a date on the contract and a signature on the bottom, that is not management. Where were the trainers that sit down and level with these guys every single day saying, what are we going to do? Because if the trainers win the spot of going, man, you've already done it and your number could come up at any point. And if it does, we got enough memories, enough success, and enough money in the bank account that it doesn't matter. No problem. But there's 556 athletes under contract. If we were to go through 556 athletes right now, one by one, as nauseating as that would be, I am going to guess off the top of my head, a dozen or less will have an answer to the question that I'm posing you of simply who would you like to see them face? And I'm going to have a dozen or less if I'm the promoter come right across the plate that fall in my lap. But for all of the other hundreds out there, I'm going to have to now do my job. I'm going to have to get out some video cameras and I'm going to have to get a media tour going, and I'm going to have to tell some stories, and I'm going to have to put this footage and juxtapose it with that, and I'm going to have to get an interview with this guy and get an interview with that guy. That's the job, and that's the business that you've elected. But you're going to have 12 of them whose names will come off the tip of your tongue that you can now move on to the next problem, which isn't, do I want them to fight? Can I get them to? Can I negotiate with this side and hear all of this diva's problems and put that with all of this diva's problems and get them to actually make that walk when the music hits those speakers? But that's the problem that you want to have. And I'm bringing this to you because if you think that the only thing you can learn from Israel Adesanya is how to throw a punch or a kick, you're really missing what is going on here. And the same thing goes with Conor McGregor. And if you think that he got where he got because he's running his mouth, or if you're one of the things that people that think, no, he's got a great slip and can throw a great left hand, it really doesn't make a bit of difference. When I ask you, who do you want to see Conor McGregor fight, there is going to be a name that comes out of your mouth instantly, without pause. It could be a dream fight, and you may not get the fight. It might be an out-of-the-weight class fight. We can have that conversation later. If you are one of the 556 athletes under contract currently, and you are not one of the 12 who the average fan, some of you don't know. I'm not positive if I put this question to Junior Dos Santos, hey, Junior, the world really didn't know who they wanted you to fight. Who did you want to fight? I'm not sure he could answer it. And I'm not looking to be a scumbag to Junior. By the way, I'm really not. But where was the manager on that one? Where was the interviews? Who's controlling the social media accounts? Who's got the logins? Who's collecting 10% and all they're doing is putting a date on a contract and a signature at the bottom? Where was the story? Where was the planning? You don't have to elect yourself mayor of Get the Hintville to understand if you've got a sliding record and you're over 40 years old, this is a really tough sport for you. But if you have a story to tell, there will always be an audience to tell it to. So where was the manager taking the money that is yet to tell this story? In 2 months since Junior's been in the ring last, where was the manager with their hand out who has failed to tell the story or beg the question of who do you want to see Junior face? And the fighter's never going to get this right, guys. The fighter is always going to say the dumbest and most boring thing, which is whatever gets me to the championship, and I want the championship, and my best days are still in front of me. Good job, fighter. No problem. Where was the manager? Where was the manager to sit them down and explain to them, if this is your goal, and it sure sounds like a lofty and wonderful goal, and I would hate to take that from you, but what are the baby steps that we're going to go to achieve to get you there? And it always bothers people when they want to admit the truth to this business, which is that there is a business here. It always bothers somebody when they're confronted with the reality that, yes, there are politics and policies in place. They love to do that, but they love to congratulate the fighter who's become a champ. Great job, champ, but it's not because of your left and right combo. Do you know how many fighters have been under contract and are currently under contract that could win the belt in 2 different divisions because they're simply the best? The answer to that question is no, you don't. No, you don't know, because there is not a competitive architecture in place where they could go out and do just that. There's not a competitive architecture in place like the NCAA or even the Olympic Games, where even if it takes you 4 years in between, you can enter this bracket, but come back and enter a different bracket. You have to play the game right now within the politics and the policy to be given the opportunity in the form of a contract to even walk in there to prove how good you are. So if you want to go and study the champs and how they did it and talk about their training camp and all the miles they put in and how many times they hit the speed bag, you can do that. Or you could ask the Daniel Cormier and the Conor McGregor and the Henry Cejudos of the world the real question that you can't get from a trainer and you can't get from a manager, which is how did you get the office to offer you those fights? Because I think I could win them too. I think I'm the best in this division, but I think I'm the best in this division too. But how do I get the chance to prove it? Those are the real questions. That's the real genius that they had. And someone would have a great answer for you. Sometimes the promoter wants to get you beat up and to do it is to take you in a different weight class, and it turns out you're so good you shoved it up everybody's ass. Sometimes that's the answer, but if you're not exploring this, if you're not doing the research and trying to figure out how did they even get the opportunity to try, you're really missing it, and you're really missing the point, and you're not really studying and paying homage to the greats. Conor McGregor will not leave a press conference without you being interested in what he's going to do next. He just won't do it. And it's not because he's talking trash or because he's training in some special way. He's going to make you interested in what he's going to do next. Good for him. Israel Adesanya, that's happening right in front of you guys, and you're going to dismiss it because he's such a star and he's such a champion. But he does not see it that way. He sees it as he is a guy who would like to have a job to come to tomorrow. And he doesn't make mistakes. And he will never leave you wondering, or he'll never leave you thinking or scratching your head or having to flip through papers and make sure dates match up and getting so-and-so on the phone to answer the most basic question, which is who do you want to see him fight next? And always have the argument on who it's actually going to be and all the problems and the conflicts that come with that. But the simple question of who do you want to see him fight next? He will make sure that you have that answer because he will hand it to you. He will tell you before he leaves the ring who he wants to fight next, and he will tell you why that should be interesting to you. He will then leave it to the audience to decide. Just because he says it doesn't make it so, but he'll give you, he'll sure help you get there. He'll sure help you get there, and nobody's safe, and that's just the business that we're in. It's a very tough and very competitive field. But somewhere between Alistair's last fight and somewhere between Junior's last fight, somebody collected 10%. And if Alistair and Junior aren't looking at that person today and asking them, why was there no interest built around my next opponent? Why was there not one specific name that we went after? Why was there not one specific story that we attempted to tell? It's a very fair question. I don't suggest for you undercut or that you take your money back. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that you don't make the same problem twice. And to ask the manager flat out, what was your plan? Because now I really need, first thing we got to do is get you signed to an organization. Okay, great. No, I don't agree. I don't agree that the first thing I need to do is get signed to an organization. I believe what I need to do is have somebody interested in my next fight. So who is that going to be with? We can find the organization. Who says that it has to go in this specific order? Well, get signed and make your way up there. Who says that? You guys show me a court anywhere or a jury anywhere or a judge anywhere, anything notarized, signed, and dated that says there's an order to this sport, and I'll stand down. I'm here to tell you there is not. There is a belief, and the belief is done by managers, and the only thing that they were good enough is was to fool you that you need them. Where in the hell is the plan for who Junior Dos Santos fights next? You've had 8 weeks. Not only have you had 8 weeks, you have 8 weeks with one of the most fearsome heavyweight fighters of all time who used to be the champion of the world. I could open my door right now, turn my head left and right, find a guy, bring him in here and tell you a story. And with that guy, I'm not going to have a former champion of the world. I'm not going to have a guy who's come through the Ultimate Fighter. I'm not going to have a guy who's going to be in the future Hall of Fame. I'm going to open my door and find a random person. I would bring him in the studio and I would tell you a story better than the story of which Junior Dos Santos managers have failed to tell in 8 weeks with one of the greatest of all time. You guys don't see the lesson in this. If you don't see the lesson in this, because it's, right, do you understand? What the manager is going to tell Junior today is, well, first thing we got to do, Junior, we got to see what's out there and get you in an organization. Excuse me, 24 hours ago, I had an organization. It was the one I used to be king of. So apparently your order of events of getting signed first is not the way we have to do things. As a matter of fact, whoever told you that it was? Now I don't have an organization and I don't have a platform, but boy, I'm really scratching my head because the message I could have got out yesterday and used is going to be a lot harder now that I'm sitting in purgatory. But there's 556 other athletes that sit in that same spot. And of those 556, not one of their managers is going to call them today and say, hey, by the way, you know what might be a good idea? To make sure that we line something up. No, the manager's going to go, you know what? We got a 3-fight deal, and the history of this sport says that you generally got to use lose 3 in a row to get cut. And you know what? You even won your last 2. I think in a bat outing, you're going to get 2 more. I think 2021 is safe. We can kick this can until 2022. And with a little luck in there, you bat 1-1 and we can restart that 3-loss clock. Who says? Who says any of that? I am sitting in Westland, Oregon right now with a very good microphone that I got from Best Buy and a level good camera that I used from a guy on Craigslist and felt like I got a good deal. And I'm just shooting with you. That's the truth and that's my set. To this corner sits a man named Vince, and on Skype with me right now is my partner Ryan. If the 3 of us took this Best Buy, this Craigslist, these 2 guys, and open my front door, left or right, I could find you a body that I could bring in here, sit down, and tell you a compelling story as to who you would like to see him fight. I swear to goodness I could do it. If you challenge me, I actually will. And you know what? Whoever I go out and find is not going to have the lineage or the paperwork on the resume of the former goddamn champion of the world whose manager didn't think to get him a fight.
They don't call you the bad guy for nothing. They don't call you the bad guy.
Nah, if you ain't earned that rap, they don't call you that. They don't call you uncle, they don't call you bad. They don't say that shit the greatest to ever step on the mat. They don't watch your whole playlist and never skip doing ad. Hey, Chael, the pinnacle male. NordVPN and Rich while up for sale. You can manscape now that your ED's better. Roman got your mojo, now won't you go get her? Big Ram, Main Street, Coffee Dash Cam, Blackview, Lucy Nicotine, Gum Chew. Submission underground, 4-pack revolution. Barbella, Power, New Gear resolution. Bet DSI, Sheath Underwear, Premiere, Fight Picks, Hayabusa, DraftKings, Blue Blocks, Light Specs, Mass Arms, Magic Spoon. Bad guys need to eat a good breakfast too.
They don't call you the bad guy for nothing. They don't call you the bad